Hi, Marisa.
Hello. Good evening.
How are you?
Oh, I'm better for seeing your face, Alena. I'm
You
so
too.
sorry.
Okay, don't worry about it. No
We
problem
are
at
we
all.
are live, so I'm just going to explain to anyone watching that
Sure. Go for it.
we had a bit of a kind of time difference, jiggery pokery, where I think we both kind of thought something different, but we're here. That's the main
Yeah,
thing.
we
Thank.
made it.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you. It's 8:20 on a Monday night of a long weekend in
Oh,
Sydney.
bless you.
It's the last day of term. Of term break. So tomorrow is the first day of term.
Okay.
So yeah, so we were out at the beach and the wind's just come up. We were getting some takeaway and
Oh.
came home, watched a quick episode of UK Grand Designs, and now here we are.
So, Alena, will you explain where you are so that the
Yeah,
listeners...
certainly. I'm in the northern beaches of Sydney, so just north of Manly. If anybody's been around Sydney, just very close to Manly.
Oh, cool. Sounds awful. Sounds
In
terrible.
Australia. Terrible place to be in lockdown.
Terrible, but yeah.
Um,
Well, it's lovely to have you here. So I'm just going to do
Thanks.
a little intro,
Please
Alena.
do.
So you describe yourself as an Aussie mum of three. You're
Yes.
called Soul Mama Hub, and you are loved up and fired up to support mothers who feel lost, not just to survive, but thrive. And I'm totally down with that as one of those one of those
Yeah.
mothers, because there's a lot of survival going on, but
Oh
we want
my
to see,
gosh.
gosh,
So much. So much. And for me too.
especially at the moment, right? So
Yeah. More
so
than ever. That's why it's more than ever needed, I think.
yeah, for definite, which is I guess why we're having this conversation right now.
Yes.
So Alena, part of my whole thing is I'm fascinated with why people came to start the businesses that they did and why they do what they do. So could you tell us a little bit more about your story and how and why you came to be doing this work?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to, Marisa. How long have you got?
As long as I'm just, I'm strapping in. I'm in for the duration.
Okay, so I guess I'll start with since I was very young, I've always been a bit of a nurturer. So the mother archetype is something that's been around me my whole life. I had brother and sister who were much younger than me, and I was always kind of quite instrumental in their care. And then I always used to look after my friends like they were my own children as well. I was always the mother hen, you know. And then I had a little bit of trauma playing out in my life, and some of the coping mechanisms I had for that trauma involved addiction and abusive relationships and less than perfect start to my motherhood journey because I was having a child in a difficult relationship, in difficult circumstance personally. You know, so my first child actually was a single parent from when he was 3 months old till he was
Wow.
7, and then met the man I now call my husband, who is English, and we had 2 more children. So I've had 3 very different experiences of motherhood, and through all of that have always been one of those people that I did a lot of personal development, and I've done a lot of healing and recovery myself, and I've also become a martial arts instructor to women, which I do now. I'm training for a black belt next year.
Which we're definitely going to talk about before this.
Yeah, great. I love talking about that favorite topic. So there's been a very interesting and funny kind of journey to use that word that's overused.
Sure.
And I found myself in this place of, I know I need to use my voice to serve people. I know I need to use my experience to help other mothers navigate. I know that I relate to a lot of different circumstances that a lot of different women experience. And so I felt like I kind of had this sense that I just needed to do something for women everywhere. And so I've done lots of different things over the years, and most of them have been voluntary. So I started a group called Mums in Bath, which has now got about 7,000 people when we lived in Bath. I've started a group here where we live now called Freshy Families that has about 2,000 people in it. I've got, you know, Instagram, Facebook. I've got sort of audiences, and I just feel very strongly that I'm here to serve women and bring women together. So I'm a community builder, and I'm also a coach. I run a community and a membership. So that's what I do now. And I guess the main reason is just that I'm on a bit of a mission to support women, to support themselves and each other. And the other key part of that is about ethical living and being custodians, not just of ourselves and our families, but also of the planet. Yeah. So how do we become better custodians? And I feel like definitely have some things to share myself, and also curate a lot of other people's information, a lot of other amazing people to come and talk to the women that I gather. So that's kind of the reason.
I mean, you know, and I'm so, oh gosh, I mean, how long have you got? Because there's so many ways to go with this conversation. But yeah, and I saw that, and I love the way you describe yourself as a curator, because I've definitely seen that on your feed and you know your website, and I guess I mean, this is a conversation that we're having in the UK in a different way, but I guess because you're in Australia as well, that there's this whole notion of being a custodian rather than colonizing. You know, our nations have a big old,
absolutely.
You know,
I love hearing you say that. I do. Yeah,
it's really important. I mean, actually, you know, I'm in Devon, as I think most people will know now, but and I know that you've got a bit of a connection to the West Country as well. But even those conversations are being had here about land ownership and can anyone really own land and all of that stuff. So it feels to me like I can see how those two elements of your work fit together. But I just want to. I want to just say thank you for sharing and being so candid about your experiences, because again, I think it's having the courage to be able to talk about this stuff just allows the conversation to open up. And it's very interesting to me because I'm currently, and I'll share with you and the listeners as well, is that I'm currently on a bit of a journey with what Bethany Webster describes as the mother wound. So if we've been mothered in a way that is less than perfect, how that shows up for us as women and how it shows up for us as mothers.
It's a huge one. What's going on for you? What are you happy to share?
That I'm having to drastically distance myself from my mother relationship because there's stuff there, there's wounds that I've been trying to heal that are not mine to heal. And what's interesting about that, and again, I know we're going to get into this, but what I'm, you know, because I support predominantly women in business. I do work with guys. I work with couples a lot as well. And what's really interesting to me is how that has not only showed up in my business, but it shows up in other women and the way that they run their businesses.
Hugely.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's that thing of having to be the nurturer, feeling bad about taking your space, maybe
the inability to receive.
Exactly. Which, you know, on a deeper level, that is the stuff that shows up in our businesses all the time, which is why I felt so prompted to have a conversation with you and to, you know, to explore this a bit together. So
beautiful.
Thank you so. I mean, it feels like this is possibly the start of several conversations rather than.
Oh yeah, I'd like that. That would be great.
But yeah, it feels to me. I don't want to mention the big P, patriarchy word so early on in our conversation, but you know, we're still kind of operating in that. For me, that has an impact on how women mother and the relationship that women have on each other. It certainly shows up in all of our businesses all the time because of the way. So when you talk about being a custodian, that is also, you know, very linked to how the patriarchy shows up in our lives.
Interesting. I was going to say paradigm. As soon as you said the P word, I thought of paradigm. And I know there is a shift. I feel there's a massive shift occurring, just even in having a conversation like this.
Exactly.
There's a massive paradigm shift occurring in the world at the moment. There's another P word, which is power. So the way that the relationship we have with power within ourselves and also outside of ourselves is really playing out at the moment in a big way in the world, I feel.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I feel, is just a really massive reflection of our own paradigm, our own power. So I feel like when the way we view our world is so influenced by our own experience. If we have trauma, if we're carrying trauma, it tends to be played out. And I think a lot of what's going on in the world at the moment is a collective trauma playing out.
Yeah.
And the way we're projecting on each other, and the way we're projecting on our leaders, and our leaders also have their trauma, and our leaders are also playing out their trauma, their unhealed trauma. So it's like this massive storm of all kinds of stuff, you know, and we could talk about that for hours, I think.
Yeah, sure. And you know, yeah, we really could talk about it for hours, but it's interesting what you say, because for me it's that thing around the victim becomes person kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
So that's what we're seeing played out in our leadership. It's like traumatized people, and I remember a constellation therapist saying to me, you know, it's traumatized people traumatizing the earth,
hurt people
people around them. So when we talk about power, and I think really important word to keep talking about again, because what I see is the way that people will use their power in you know, appropriately or inappropriately in their businesses, and the way that they conduct themselves with other people. But if we begin with ourselves, and you know, that trauma just kind of goes around and around. So yeah, clearly this is the first of several conversations, but let's I want to get into I guess what I really wanted to hear from you about is, you know, I think what we're saying is we're very clear about what some of the issues are and the power you say in which we're operating. So I want to get on to really looking at some of the solutions and where, you know, and just your thoughts around that. So obviously I know that you run you know, several communities and a membership, and we both run memberships, and feel I think we're quite similar in that way of, you know, trying to bring people together and look at community. Whether like-minded people that are grappling with the same things can kind of come together. So what I'm interested in hearing from you is, what do you feel are the main benefits of being a part of a community, especially for mothers and families in the world that we find ourselves in?
Well, there's so much displacement. The first obvious thing to say is that there is so much disconnection and displacement. I feel that a lot of women and mothers, and I won't speak about men so much, only because I don't understand that experience so much, so I don't want to speak to it, not to discredit that there is a lot of experience going on there as well. But I just want to say that from the perspective that I understand, that women and mothers are very disconnected, not only from each other but from themselves, and so many expectations and layers of expectations that we are conditioned to respond to, and that we place upon ourselves as well, that we condition ourselves to respond to or react to, and then we sort of end up in this kind of triple bind. We don't know who we are, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know our purpose, we just know that we're meant to be more, you know, and that can be very, very disconnecting in general, and it can be overwhelming and all of that. So for me, the solution is connection. So for me, the solution is very much about connecting within and connecting to each other, and then in community. So that's the way I run my membership as well. I see it, you know, we are the kernel in the center, and then it literally emanates from there. First of all is just the essentials, you know, the first stage of the membership journey for me with my members is just to look at sleep and rest, and then fitness and exercise, and then nutrition, and then mindset and mindfulness and meditation. And those 4 pillars are what we sort of look at. Okay, so which one can't do them all at once. So you just pick the worst one. You go, okay, which one am I worst at right now? And then that will have the biggest effect on all the rest. So that's where we start. And then we move through to the next stage, which is actually about connection, really explicitly. How do we connect in general with our families, with ourselves, with our partners, with our communities? And we look at that, and we kind of have a good think about that and reflect on that. And that's maybe the point where we might realize we need some other healing. We might need to seek some specialized healing because we can't connect, or we're disconnected in some way. And, you know, I'm not a be all end all, but I will certainly help my members define what they need to do there, and help them explore that and reflect on it, and perhaps heal it, self-heal it, because self-healing is powerful too, you know. And then we move on to the home, and that's where a sort of a big ethical home piece. So I help my members learn about how to just ethicalize the home. How do we look at our home and design it in a way that's simpler and easier to live in, and less demanding of us, and less demanding of resources, and less wasteful. So it's really basic things like, let's make fermented foods and see how easy that is. Let's make our own, you know, whatever we feel like making our own. And there's so many things you can make yourself so easily, you know, just so I just teach people, this is how you make hand wash, you know, you have to buy it. This is how you make a hair mask. This is how you make really simple stuff, you know, just the basics. I make one of everything. Fabric softener, you know, I haven't bought fabric softener for 3 years or something. So just things like that. And I just show how easy that is. I just demystify it. And you do, again, you do one of those or 10 of those. And then we move on to things like finding a path. So what is your path? Let's work out what really is your path, and how do you move forward into fulfillment yourself. And then the last piece, the sort of stage 5, is like purpose. So how do you then serve? So now that you're okay, you can now start to give unto the world and serve your higher purpose and serve others. So that's the kind of stages we go through. And to me, there's just an innate wisdom in the fact that the solution is we need to connect, and we can't connect if we're not okay. So the first thing is, how do we become okay, and how do we support each other? And in terms of community, I just feel like, certainly my own experience is that I can't do all that on my own. There's just no way. I need accountability. I need support, and I need the wisdom of other people. There's only so much I can see through my own eyes, and then I sort of, the blinkers are still on, you know, so I need other people to help me see things in a different way. And there's an exponential kind of effect when everybody has a similar intention. It happens more easily. You know, you can battle something for 10 years and then you have one conversation and it changes. Like, that's the power of connection and community, you know, to me.
And it seems there's almost a cyclical nature then to the work, is it? Because the work never stops, does it? You know, you uncover one layer, and you know, someone described it as you have more bandwidth then for dealing with other. It's like, oh, okay, I've done, oh, great, and I, you know, and you think, great, I've gotten to this point, and then some other curveball or something, but it won't have the same impact because you have healed and you have. You know, and I'm so struck by what you said about being of service, because that is huge for me in my work as well. And I will see, you know, and again, it's so interesting how for a lot of people who are purpose driven, it's around the money and how they have conversations around them. It's like, I can be of service or I can earn money, but I can't do both. And so this is the, you know, some of the stuff that I unravel with clients
interesting
a lot is actually, you know, you can be, you know, financially sustainable and you can do great things. It doesn't have to be that those things are separate.
I agree. And I think there's a misunderstanding around that it has to be like, I have to go from doing my job that is completely 100% disconnected to my purpose to a completely different job and a completely different position or a completely different career. I don't think that's right. I don't actually think that changing everything at once is effective. I think what you do is you start from where you're at and you go, okay, well, how can I bring what I'm passionate about and what the purpose I am driven to serve into what I'm doing now? So how can I just edge one step closer? And then that changes things. And then I another step closer, and then that changes things. And I think we've become very impatient and very impulsive in that. And I just don't think that's the way it really works. I think we have to trust there's a divine process and there's an intentional process that we must follow. And it's not going to happen tomorrow or maybe next year, but you just start from wherever you are and you make one change, you know.
And mindset really is everything, isn't it? I mean, and this is what shows up in my work all the time. But I just want to touch upon what you said about connection, because when I hear the word connection, I think about what you were saying about connection to self. Without being connected to self, this shows up in business all the time, because the paradigm in which we operate has told us that in order to be successful, we need to behave in a certain way.
Yes, the lack of authenticity in that.
It's so lacking in authenticity, and so people then go, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to look at that.
Yes, we've all done it.
And it's you can't do it. But also, I've recently heard this expression around authenticity, that sometimes, in order to be authentic, we have to let other people down. I think, you know, and again, it's about reframing that. So we all know what we mean by that. But I think what the meaning I take from that is, in order to absolutely step into your true self, and your true self is your authentic self, where you are connected to self, that might mean that's going to, you know, trigger people in some way. That's going to
Sure.
bring up something for them. And we have to be able to do that, but we have to do that with support. And I think when you're talking about the community aspect, that's what you're talking about, because as we move through those, uncovering those layers, we have to be courageous, don't we? We have to sometimes rip off the band-aid, and
it's a risk.
Painful. So we need the community support and others going, you know, I know that you've got this, in order to do that and step into our authentic selves, because then we can be of service. But if we're not showing up for ourselves, how can we be of service to others? Is that the kind of...
I feel like, I know exactly what you're talking about. And the words I sometimes use around that is, it's like an energy leak or an integrity leak, you know, like when we can talk about this in cognitive terms, you know, when there's cognitive dissonance is the psychological term. So when you have one part of you is doing one thing, but another part of you knows it's not right. And that creates cognitive dissonance. And the way the brain works is it will seek to resolve cognitive dissonance at all costs. So it's an extremely uncomfortable situation, and it will usually lead to some form of denial of one or the other, because we can't exist like that. We can't exist in cognitive dissonance. Our brain won't let us. It takes too much energy. So in order to exist, we have to be aligned. And so sometimes we do that at the cost of something important to us, because that's how we work, right? And that can go on for years. But there'll be some part of you, like the soul, the heart, the other bit that's not the brain, another type of brain, that will be telling you and creating situations to tell you, this isn't right, this isn't you. And we know. There's a part of us that knows that this isn't right, this isn't us, right? And that's the part of us that answers the call of people like you and I, and says, okay, I need help. I need to go and be around a different sort of mindset. I need to find another way to authentically be me. And we know that a lack of authenticity, it's not just uncomfortable, it's actually a health risk. I mean, it's trauma. So we know, like the work of Gabor Mate, he talks about this a lot. That, and I know myself, early life trauma, or you speak to someone who exists in a non-mainstream situation, like whether they be LGBTQ, or, you know, if they're different in some way, in inverted commas, they may have experienced something like this, where they have been forced, or, you know, attempted forced to be someone they're not. And that is trauma. So authenticity is not just something, you know, if we can, it's something we must seek, because it's actually a serious health risk if we don't. And it's destructive if we don't, because trying to be someone you're not has a whole set of implications that emanate out into the world that are very dangerous. So there's a huge reason why seeking to be all that you are, and really purpose driven, and really understanding yourself deeply and living that out is important, you know. And it's on a lot of different levels.
And for me, it's also where, so I see it's, you know, if we're talking about cognitive dissonance, when we are not living in our authentic selves, or we haven't, you know, made that connection, because denial serves a purpose, doesn't it? It's really
survival.
But in my experience, you know, and I'm talking, you know, personally as well as what I've seen, is that it's at that point that the addiction steps in, or the inappropriate behaviours, or, you know, the way it shows up in business is in constant sabotage. So
because you're trying to hide it, aren't you? You're trying to hide that you're not being yourself.
Right? But also there are times when, you know, the thing about success, and, you know, without getting into the, you know, the nuts and bolts of what that is going to be for everyone, because it's going to be different. You need you know, you need to be up for that, don't you? You need to be, it's a responsibility as well.
And willingness. Without the willingness, it doesn't happen. Right.
And so, do you know, what's he called? Gay Hendricks?
Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap. 100%. I was just thinking about that too. 100%.
Just on my shelf here.
Great book.
You know, that whole thing about the upper limit problem, because we get to, and it's like, oh, this feels like this level of success is too much. I know I'm going to come along and I'm going to, you know, do my
It's
best.
the status quo, that need
Yeah,
to keep the status quo in
exactly.
place. Don't change. Don't change. You might get eaten by a dinosaur. Like, that's the kind of thinking, right?
Yeah, because also it's that thing about being loyal to your tribe. And when your first tribe is your family, and so if there's
Yes.
stuff in your family around, no,
Yes.
you need to show up as this person, but you definitely don't want to
Yeah.
show up as that person.
Yes.
And so I think that both the work that we do is about allowing people, first of all, to see it, but then being able to step into, you know, we've got your back, and this community has got your back, so you can absolutely step into that place and
Yes,
maybe
safe spaces, 100%.
yeah, exactly. So amazing. Thank you.
And a different tribe. Yeah, no problem.
Different tribe. Yeah, and actually it is about finding a different tribe. And that, what I love, I mean, lockdown is, you know, obviously we're still in it. You know, the pandemic has exposed so many things, so many difficult things that are ongoing, and really is going to reset the way we do life and society. But what I'm fascinated in is how all these incredible communities that have come together as a result of, you know, not being able to, you know, the fact that you and I are able to have this conversation on
amazing
world, and I feel completely connected to you and what you're saying, and I'm going to carry that through my day and my week, and you know that conversation is a game changer for me. So I think, again, there are huge opportunities here, aren't they? We just need to tap into them.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper, if we can go a little bit deeper.
Sure, we can. Why not?
Because I'd love to hear from you. I mean, obviously you've been, you know, we've touched upon it already, but in a way, just to have this conversation about how we, you know, redo parenting and motherhood, so everyone in the family gets their needs met. And because I work predominantly with women, and I don't hear this so much from the guys, but from the women, you know, not all of the women I work with are mothers, obviously, but there's this real sense of, can I be a successful entrepreneur out in the world and still, you know, show up for my family, still show up for my children and be a good mother and be a good wife, you know, but actually balancing that with their absolute necessity that their business should thrive, because it's a creative expression of who they are, and they want to be of service in the world as well. So I'm just really interested, you know, to hear some of your solutions to that issue. I know we've touched upon some already, but
it is a really interesting topic, and I really feel that this is so up to the individual what that means. Like, how to be a successful mother and successful entrepreneur is so different for everyone. And I would say, if you are able to nourish yourself and nourish your family and remain connected within yourself and remain connected with your family and friends, partners, then that's success. You know, if you can continue to sustainably back it up every day, that's success. So if you're measuring success by money, or by how you feel, or by how healthy your children are, or by how healthy your relationship is, everybody's going to measure that in a different way.
Exactly.
It's so personal. And so there is no absolute here. And I actually feel like it's really more about, entrepreneurial is by nature a creative role.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that sort of, you change, you know, millionaires change their plans every minute, billionaires change them every second. Like, it's that kind of thing about, it's how adaptive are you, and how comfortable are you with the uncomfortable, and how comfortable are you with taking risks, and how comfortable are you with changing tack when you've bitten off more than you can chew in a day and you realize your child needs you. You know, so I actually feel like it's about adaptability. So it's about, how do we really apply self-mastery and empathy together, you know, because we have to have enough empathy and connection with our families and our partners to know when they need us, and we need to put that business thing down. And we also have to have enough self-mastery to be able to do what we need to do to run that business in a financially sustainable way and in a personally sustainable way. So it's really, for me, it's about those things. It's about self-mastery and connection and listening and talking and communication skills with your partner and your support systems, and, you know, and also just really being imperfect, like just being able to fess up when you make a mistake. You know, like when we started our lockdown recently, my daughter, she's 8 and she was doing schooling, and she's clever and she's good at school. So it was easy for me to think that she was fine if I just left her to it and kept working. And I was maybe being a bit too ambitious, and I'd set up a date to launch my membership.
Hey,
And
that's too.
and then I realized she wasn't coping, and I wasn't coping. And I had to talk to the people, communicate with my support systems, and then I had to change my plan on a dime. And then I'm a big believer in scheduling calendars, ironically, considering what happened with us. But I'm a big believer in making time on the calendar for things. So like I block out 2 hours every day on my calendar, which just says buffer. That's all it says every day, because I know that I need to leave space for things. And we need to allow space. We don't allow space. We tend to cram. We want to grow. We want to more. But actually less is sometimes the way to go. So I'm actually in an active less process, not an active grow process, but it's refined. So it's like I'm choosy. You know, I'm quite picky about what I do with my time. So it's been really interesting doing that now with my daughter. I realized she needed me every day. So I put that in the calendar, 1 hour every morning, Jemima time, you know, and maybe she doesn't need it, but it's there. So I think it's just adapting and being responsive and resilient. And if you start to feel, you know, resentful, angry, ragey, which we all do, we all get those feelings, you know, I'm pissed off because my time is not my own. I'm a mother and, you know, my kids can interrupt me at any moment. I'm pissed off because my partner's much better at like making his own really beautiful full gourmet breakfast than I am. You know, he always finds the time to do that. Whereas I'll be like delicing the kids' hair and cleaning up that, you know, and I'm like, how come I didn't get to make my own perfect breakfast every day? I don't understand that. But he's really good at that. So if I'm feeling resentful about that, that says to me something is calling for some care. So I'm like, okay, I have to. Recently I started putting money away each week so that every month I have the money for a massage or a naturopath or a just something, you know. So I just have this fund. It's actually its own bank account. It's called my rejuvenation account. And it is only put there for that reason. And I'm not allowed to touch it for anything else. I'm not allowed to spend it on my kids. I'm not allowed to spend it on something frivolous. It's only for me booking in something that nourishes me, because I noticed that I wasn't doing it. So it's like, what can you do to ensure that everyone's getting what they need? Now, first of all, the thing is, you're never going to be able to be all things to all people. You're never going to be able to actually do that mythical, like meet everybody's needs all the time. Just won't happen. It's not possible. So adjust your expectations, you know, like it's like go all out and dream the biggest dream and aim the highest high, but expect nothing. You know, that's my approach.
So it's a bit like so it's holding the vision, but at the same time surrendering.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I love that word.
I'm gonna hold the vision, and this is what I'm, as a person who is very, you know, I use the term ambitious advisedly because I don't know how else to express it. But what I've realized over the years is that my will to get things done is a buzzkill, right? It just kills.
I call that choking the monkey. I don't know why. I just call it. It's like you're holding on to something so tight that you're killing it.
And I mean, that is so. So it's about having that quite light touch, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a sign as well. Like if you're obsessing about something, that's a sign to back away quietly with your hands open. You know.
Yeah, because. So I will share with you and the listeners, because I have shared this before. I also, in my infinite wisdom, decided to launch my membership during the lockdown while my daughter was being homeschooled, and I got severe burnout. And the way that I recognized it was, I was becoming such a bore. My sense of humor was dropping off constantly, and I was becoming obsessed with the details.
Yeah, same.
And that was it was getting, you know, it was unhealthy. And it was one day when my daughter said to me, "You're just horrible to be around." Like, she's 11 and she's you know, she's just an amazing, she'll just cut through the noise. And she said, "You're just horrible." And I was like, wow, she's
right.
step up, you know, and I had to step away from everything.
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying, and I love that bank account that's got that, because that you're saying that's for you, and that is your, you know, what did you call it? Your renourish, your
Rejuvenation.
rejuvenation. And I love it, because actually that is the bank account that you're filling up for the other people in your life as well, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
You're making
I question that slightly. I know that's true. I 100% know that's true. But I question that slightly because it devalues the importance of it to you.
yes.
And actually, like, stuff everybody else. I'm doing this for me.
Yeah.
And of course, then that means that I'm better for everybody else.
Yeah.
But you got to do it for you, because if you don't, you're devaluing you, you know.
Yeah. But look how easy it is. I mean, I'm 50 this year, and
Me too.
You know, I've spent thousands of pounds and hours in therapy, and I've considered myself fit, but yet you've just recognized that's the trap. It's like, oh my God, you're right.
We all do it. And that was us demonstrating why you need other people.
Exactly. But you're my accountability today. Thank you so much.
Sure, no worries.
It's been amazing. So I'd love to obviously take time to have another chat with you, because
please do. Yes, that'd be great.
I'd love to do that. But I just want to, before we kind of wrap up, I mean, I think you've given so many, you know, amazing ideas, so many things to go away and think about for people listening, and, you know, just some small ways that we can really start to feel more connected to ourselves, which is going to benefit us, our businesses, our relationships with our family, and ultimately how we can be of service, and how we can, you know, get involved with trying to find solutions to the big problems that we find in the world. That's what we're all here to do ultimately. But I just want to go back to, you know, to kind of end our talk today. You spoke at the beginning about being a martial arts expert.
Oh, yes.
Really impressive. I think you're a black belt, I think, which is really...
Almost.
Oh,
not quite. So I'm turning 50 in February, and this year I will train towards my black belt grading, which will be, hopefully, you can never count on these things, at the end of next year.
Amazing.
So the story is that in my 20s, I trained for 5 years. Wow. And then I waited 20 years and then I went back, and 3 years later, roughly, I'm now just before a black belt, heading into a black belt year. I'm a women's martial arts instructor, so I teach close to my home in Brookvale on a Wednesday morning. I train some women in partnership with another amazing second degree black belt woman. She comes in and teaches too. But it's mostly me teaching, and it's amazing, incredible thing coming back to it. It's something I always loved, and it's a real honor to be teaching it. I absolutely love teaching women. It's just an incredible, fun thing.
And what does it mean to you to have martial arts? Because obviously, you know, there's the things that people know. It's kind of the discipline and the, you know.
So much of what we've talked about, I could give you in martial arts terms. Yeah. It's highly transferable. The principles that we learn are just ancient principles. They're ancient principles that cross cultures, cross religions, and they're all about humility and tuning in and being present to what's going on around you, accepting, surrendering to what's right in front of you. Being able to adapt in every single moment. When you're doing martial arts, you're adapting to what's happening. So you have to be extremely responsive to each other as well as you train together. It's a group, you know, experience. So a lot of the things we've talked about are playing out for me on the mats as well. And I'm a baby martial artist, you know, I'm really very junior in the scheme of things. So I'm learning so much from the masters and grandmasters above me. There's a genealogy of ideas, you know, so it's a very communal learning experience. It's very different to what a lot of people think. There's really, I mean, yes, it's a combat sport for sure, but for me, it's much more on the art side than the sport side. But we do have to be extremely fit and healthy. We have to nourish ourselves properly in order to train. We have to, you know, I'm heading into a year of kind of becoming like an elite sports person. You know, I'll have to be a very high level athlete to get through this year. So it does push you to extremes. It's very challenging emotionally. It's confronting. You know, we actually fight. We don't do competition. I'm not really into competitive fighting is not for me.
Yeah.
But we do fight. We practice what we learn. So we do reasonably non-contact, mostly non-contact sparring, but there is some contact. But so generally, you know, it's an incredibly very encompassing sort of art form. Physical, spiritual, mental, you know, emotional, it's all going on. So, and then there's the sort of social community aspect as well, and then there's the leadership aspect. You know, I have amazing leaders, and then I become a sort of a leader as well, and it's just it's a very interesting thing.
It's really, I'm smiling because I mean, I absolutely hear what you're saying. And when you said the part about it's emotional, so my husband, who's been an acupuncturist for 35 years,
Oh wow,
is also a black belt in Aikido and Kendo.
oh fantastic.
And when we got together 15 years ago, he was like, I was like, oh, I'd love to do some Aikido. Can you show me? Yeah. So we got on the mat, and within a few minutes, I think I was in tears because
oh yeah, so intense.
Suddenly, not my husband anymore. He was the sensei, and I was like, what the heck, you know? And he was, with respect, you know, sort of threw me on the ground, you know, in a controlled, but
it's full on. It's full on.
Yeah, it was confronting.
It really is, yeah.
Even that exercise, but also being around him, because he doesn't practice now, but he did do for 25 years. But living, breathing that has made him the person he is for absolute sure. You know, so I'm just, again, it feels like we should have another conversation, but
absolutely.
I'm so inspired by that, Alena. And I just want to say a huge thank you today, because I know you took the time out. I know that, you know, the time stuff didn't work, but
doesn't matter. Absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Great. And I just look forward to having conversations with you in the future, because I know that's definitely going to happen. So
you too, I know we will as well, Marisa. It's so lovely to meet you properly.
So much.
And yes, take care and have a lovely day.
Yeah, you have a lovely night's sleep.
I'm looking forward to the next time we meet. I will.
Definitely. Oh, thank you so much. Much love. Take care.
Lots of love to you too.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Bye.